Currently, Earth. On December 7th, in the year 1787, in Dover, Delaware, the U.S. Constitution is unanimously ratified by all 30 delegates to the Delaware Constitutional Convention, making Delaware the first state of the modern United States. Less than 4 months before, the Constitution was signed by 37 of the original 55 delegates to the Constitutional Convention meeting in Philadelphia. The Constitution was sent to the states for ratification, and by the terms of the document, the Constitution would become binding once 9 of the former 13 colonies had ratified the document. Delaware led the process, and on June 21st, in 1788, New Hampshire became the 9th state to ratify the Constitution, making federal democracy the law of the land. Government under the United States Constitution took effect on March 4th in 1789. On December 7th, in 1941, at 7:55 a.m. Hawaii time, a Japanese dive bomber bearing the red symbol of the rising sun of Japan on its wings appears out of the clouds above the island of Oahu. A swarm of 360 Japanese warplanes followed, descending on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in a ferocious assault. The surprise attack struck a critical blow against the U.S. Pacific Fleet and drew the U.S. irrevocably into World War II. With diplomatic negotiations with Japan breaking down, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, our nation's 32nd president, and his advisors knew that an imminent Japanese attack was probable, but nothing had been done to increase security at the important naval base at Pearl Harbor. It was Sunday morning, and many military personnel had been given passes to attend religious services off base. At 7:02 a.m., 2 radar operators spotted large groups of aircraft in flight towards the island from the north. But with a flight of B-17s expected from the U.S. at the time, they were told to sound no alarm. Thus, the Japanese air assault came as a devastating surprise to the naval base. Much of the Pacific Fleet was rendered useless. 5 of 8 battleships, 3 destroyers, and 7 other ships were sunk or severely damaged, and more than 200 aircraft were destroyed. A total of 2,400 Americans continued their eternity, and 1,200 were wounded, many while valiantly attempting to repulse the attack. Japan's losses were some 30 planes, 5 Mitchell submarines and fewer than 100 men continued their eternity. Fortunately for the United States, all 3 Pacific Fleet carriers were out at sea on training maneuvers. These giant aircraft carriers would have their revenge against Japan 6 months later at the Battle of Midway, reversing the tide against the previously invincible Japanese Navy in a spectacular victory. The day after Pearl Harbor was bombed, President Roosevelt appeared before a joint session of Congress and declared, quote, "Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan," unquote. After a brief and forceful speech, he asked Congress to approve a resolution recognizing the state of war between the U.S. and Japan. The Senate voted for war against Japan by 82-0, and the House of Representatives approved the resolutions by a vote of 388-1. The sole dissenter was Representative Jeanette Rankin of Montana, a devout pacifist who had also cast a dissenting vote against the U.S. entrance into World War I. Did she just want us to continue to get bombed? What the hell? Okay, 3 days later, Germany and Italy declared war against the U.S., and the U.S. government responded in kind. The American contribution to the successful Allied war effort spanned 4 long years. 400,000 Americans continued their eternity in this fight. On December 7th in the year 1975, early in the morning, Indonesian forces launched a massive invasion of the former Portuguese half of the island of Timor, which lies near Australia in the Timor Sea. The Portuguese departed East Timor in August of 1975, and Indonesian troops soon began infiltrating the border from Indonesian West Timor. On November 28th, the democratically elected government of East Timor, fearing an imminent Indonesian invasion, proclaimed the Democratic Republic of East Timor. On the morning of December 7th, Indonesia responded by initiating a naval bombardment of the city of Dili, followed by landings of paratroopers from the air and of Marines on the beaches. On December 10th, a second invasion force captured the second largest city, Bacau. I have to make sure I pronounce that right. Baucau. It looks like Bacau. Okay. Elsewhere, East Timorese resistance continued, but by 1978, the annexation of East Timor by Indonesia was essentially complete. Baucau. It's pronounced Baucau, possibly. During the initial years of the Indonesian invasion and occupation, more than 100,000 East Timorese continued their eternity as a direct result of the conflict. Most of the people that continued their eternity during this conflict were described as civilians who were attacked by the military or starved in internment camps, or they were hiding in the hills from the Indonesian military. Small groups of East Timorese guerrillas continued their resistance for decades. In 1996, Jose Ramos Horta and Bishop Carlos Ximenez Bello were jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their efforts to win independence for East Timor. Indonesian dictator Suharto, who had ordered the 1975 invasion, was ousted from power in 1998, and East Timorese renewed their calls for independence. In 1999, the people of East Timor voted overwhelmingly for independence in a referendum, leading to bloody attacks by Indonesian militia forces. An Australian-led UN peacekeeping force was deployed to stop the violence. And in August of 2001, East Timor held its first democratic elections to establish an autonomous government.
The information documented and divulged on this audio file can be verified on history.com.